Hey, welcome back, folks. Great to see you on this Friday morning. Got an update for you on what is shaping up to be a major winter storm through portions of the Mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley, and that could be followed up by the potential for deep south snow and ice as we go into next week. So we've got it all. Winter is definitely in full swing here, and we're going to really feel those impacts throughout the next week or so. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so and hit that bell for the latest notifications. That'll make sure you're the first to hear about the latest model guidance and the breakdown of that guidance through this active pattern. And I'll tell you, folks, it looks to stay pretty busy through at least the middle of the month, potentially even longer than that. On some of the models, continuing that snowy and cold pattern well into the second half of January. Also, like the video and comment, let me know where you're watching from. And per usual, just want to say thanks for all of the growth recently, and I appreciate all of the returning viewers for coming back, and welcome, of course, to anyone who is new. All right, folks, with that said, let's dive into things and start breaking down the pattern here because a lot to discuss and the potential for pretty big time winter weather impacts. So starting with satellite loop, this afternoon we will actually see a bit of an appetizer to what is going to be the main course that swings through later this week and into early next week. And we're already seeing it out there. We've got this big spin up into Canada. This is producing plenty of lake effect snow as that fetch, or just another way to say the wind that is blowing over the lakes, is continuing. And seeing plenty of snow squalls into the Northeast and even up into portions of Michigan and the Ohio Valley today. This evening, that will kind of actually enhance into a bit of a mesoscale low over the Delmarva, and that could produce an enhanced area of snowfall. So we've got the big winter storm on Monday for you folks, and then also this kind of little fun piece this afternoon and overnight tonight as well that's going to kind of already coat the ground white before the big storm even gets here. Other than that, here is our big storm back out west. You can see it beginning to move ashore, and will do so this evening and overnight tonight, and then those impacts will begin to be felt around that same time into the Rockies. But then as for our ice and snowstorm into the Central Plains and through the east, really beginning Saturday night into Sunday. So you can see all this on radar currently. You can see all this snow into the east, plenty of snow squalls up into Canada, all the way back down into the Midwest, and then that little clipper system as well. Already kind of producing some snow into much of Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and back down into Tennessee. Plenty of snow up into Michigan. You're also seeing a little bit of blue down here, even into North Carolina, not far from Charlotte, and up here into Georgia. Let me know if any of that's hitting the ground. This looks pretty light on radar, so I'd be surprised if it's making it to the surface. Maybe this little bit up near Rome, Georgia, could be hitting the ground as some flurries, but definitely give me your reports. Let me know what you're seeing and if any of that is making it all the way to the surface. But either way, you get the idea. Plenty of energy out there today producing some snow, but this is just the precursor to the bigger deal. And you can see that beginning to work ashore out west today. We've got mountain snow, valley ice, and coastal rain as this is working in from Eureka all the way up through the Seattle metro. And then that will work into the Northern Rockies by tonight and into tomorrow. And let me tell you, the map is full today. We've got watches, warnings, and advisories galore across much of the states, or across much of the lower 48, I should say. And we'll kind of zoom into some areas here. Starting today, this kind of area, I'll try to zoom in to where it's not showing a little bit of everything, but I'll circle what's happening today. All of these watches, warnings, and advisories that you see in this area that is circled, that's for today's winter weather. That's for the snow squalls, the lake effect, and that little kind of clipper and meso low that's going to form this afternoon. So winter storm warnings already into portions of West Virginia there and up into the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania. We've got winter storm warnings into portions of Michigan, and then lake effect warnings for that snow from Cleveland to Buffalo and then back into the Tug Hill as well for this afternoon. And then winter weather advisories as well issued for plenty of folks. So that's the appetizer. Now let's go back out this way towards Kansas and into the Ohio Valley. This is winter storm watches now in effect for the major winter storm that's on the way this weekend and into early next week. That's from Kansas City through Jefferson City, St. Louis, Springfield, Indianapolis, Louisville, all the way up into Cincinnati and Columbus for major impacts expected from that storm. And that is also into effect out west into the northern Rockies and along portions of the mountains of the West Coast, where winter weather will be very likely from this storm system. All right, let's go ahead and do meteorology in a minute. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter segment today, but we'll break down the kind of craziness that's happening right now, and then we'll talk about the big storm separately and break down that. So right now, basically what we have is a bit of a trough dipping out east. This is producing cooler air, arguably cold air, depending on what your definition of cold is, I reckon. But what's happening is a ton of energy is just rotating around this in a couple different areas, and that's helping to produce all of these snow squalls as that energy is moving over the Great Lakes and kind of picking up some moisture. But it's also going to help to lead to a bit of a mesolow this evening across the mid-Atlantic right around this time frame. You see how we get this strong jet streak? Well, basically, just to kind of give you an idea here, if you work over a jet streak like this, what generally happens is right here on this side, you get lifting air or air that wants to rise, and that's going to produce more precipitation, storminess, depending on the time of the year. But since it's January, this is going to produce some snow over the Delmarva, and a little area of low pressure is going to develop. And this could be moderate to heavy snowfall rates this evening as that works on through, I think, for portions of the Delmarva, and all that cold air continues to sink south and kind of, stay there for a while. And that's going to set the stage for that big winter storm by the weekend. So let's take a look at this and kind of time it out for you a little bit and tell you what you can expect out of it. This is this morning, probably about 9-10 a.m. Eastern time. These are the snow squalls we've been talking about. You can also see kind of this skinny band off the Tug Hill. That's going to produce big snow this afternoon, and then more of a kind of shield of light to moderate snow over West Virginia, Ohio, and kind of surrounding areas there. So we'll work it through this afternoon. Here we go. All of that continues. The snow squalls continue to pick up this afternoon, and by 3 p.m., we've got scattered heavy snow squalls through Ohio, West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, including Pittsburgh, up into Erie. And then you see this little shield kind of working into the Delmarva. That's the start of that mesolow by this evening, and it's going to crank up. This is about the time the sun is going down, 5 p.m. And notice this area of heavy snow on the backside of this through D.C., the Delmarva, Baltimore, could definitely pick up on a quick inch or two of snow out of this, even into southern New Jersey, Philadelphia. And as that's moving offshore, these snow squalls will continue to work in behind it through the overnight. And by tomorrow morning when we're waking up, beginning to clear out, but still some lake effect left over in Ontario and portions of upstate New York from the Finger Lakes back towards Rochester, even Buffalo, and kind of surrounding areas there, seeing some of that snow hanging on for your Saturday afternoon and evening. And you can see that enhancement of lake effect continuing through the afternoon of Saturday. And then that sets the stage for Sunday, and specifically overnight Sunday into Monday. And that's when things begin to go downhill for our next storm. All right, snowfall totals. This is just the next 2 days, so this is not really including the big storm on the way. Now, some of this you see out here, that's from our upcoming storm, but we're going to really be talking about this area. So western Michigan, going to definitely get some good snow out of this, a quick couple of inches, isolated spots, half a foot to a foot, not out of the question, especially up here in the eastern UP, and then kind of on the northern mitten here, seeing some higher end snowfall totals. And then down into Ohio, some of these totals might surprise you. Those snow squalls, they're going to pile up pretty quickly, I think, for some folks. And I think much of the state, especially the central and the eastern half of the state, could see 1 to 3 plus inches of this. You get up towards the Great Lakes near Cuyahoga County, up towards Erie, PA, we could be talking half a foot in spots from all this lake effect on the way over the next 2 days. And we'll get into the Northeast, another area we're going to see some snow. Biggest winter going to be just into the Tug Hill here, where we could see 2 feet plus of snow from that skinny band that's working ashore. It's going to definitely dump heavy totals, and then back down into Erie, into northeastern Ohio, going to see big snow, and then where those winter storm warnings are in effect for West Virginia, going to see high-end totals as well, half a foot to a foot in the mountains there. And then you see this kind of little area that's out of place from Philly back down into Baltimore through the Delmarva, much of Delaware, southern New Jersey. A good 1 to 3 inch snow event overnight tonight for many folks as that little mesolow cranks up, and probably going to surprise some people with how quickly the snow comes down. It might not snow for a long time, but the rates are going to be heavy, and I wouldn't even be surprised. I think somebody here in maybe southern New Jersey or Delaware might even get 3, 4, potentially close to 5 inches out of this event. I definitely think we're going to get surprised somewhere, and then you get that with the snow on top of it by early next week. Yeah, it's going to start to feel a lot more like winter out there for plenty of folks. All right, let's break down the big winter storm now. That's kind of the near term, and arguably this next winter storm is getting close to the near term as well. And here's the setup. Big piece of energy working in towards the west coast. And remember, this kind of trough in the east has already brought cooler air. We've already had one shot of Arctic air over portions of the eastern half of the country, and that's going to set the stage for this piece of energy to kind of ride the boundary of where that Arctic air was set by our previous storm. So I'll go ahead and move this out ahead in time for you and show it to you. Here comes the storm ashore, and then by the time we get overnight tomorrow into Sunday morning, this is really early Sunday morning, really right whenever the time or the calendar is flipping from the 4th to the 5th, you can see we've got this strong piece of energy right over Colorado, and this is going to prompt cyclogenesis at the surface in a classic Colorado low format. And the reason this is going to happen, folks, and I've talked about this a lot, but for the new viewers, I'll go back into the meteorology behind it. So you've got a strong trough here. You can see that where all of these isotachs are dipping down, indicating a pocket of cooler air is being extended southward. And what you get on the right-hand side of this, if you kind of see where I draw the line through the center of it, on the right-hand side, that's our diverging side of the storm system in the upper levels. Again, this is a map about halfway up in the atmosphere, not at the surface, but this leads to lift. This leads to divergence aloft. It makes the air want to rise because it's separating the air above it. And you get that combined with where we have that sharp temperature difference from the Arctic air to the warmer Gulf air. You rise that, and then you get the difference in temperature. It wants to begin to spin, and next thing you know, you've got low pressure beginning to develop over the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma by overnight Saturday into Sunday. And the upper level ingredients here are going to stay very favorable. And folks, this is a very impressive trough here by Sunday afternoon. We have extreme upper level lift or divergence, and this is going to produce heavy precipitation rates over Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky. And now the question is, are those heavy precipitation rates snow, ice, or rain? And that's what we're going to talk about next for your location. And then all of this slowly working east. So I think the highest precip totals, no matter what it is probably going to be right into this region of northern Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, and into portions of Ohio. But as the storm works eastbound into the mid-Atlantic, it's definitely still strong. It's still got that upper level lift. But it becomes a little less impressive compared to what we're going to see over Kansas. And you also get this little northern piece of vorticity that's going to kind of squash down on our southern piece. And that's going to create a very fine line here over the northeast where it's snowing or nothing's falling from the sky. And that's going to be something we need to figure out by your Monday forecast. And then by overnight Monday into Tuesday, this gets out of here, and that sets the stage for a potential new problem in the south that could lead to some wintry precipitation. All right, so let's go ahead and time it out for you here by Friday morning is what you're looking at, or right now basically. And today, pretty clear through the Central Plains. It's not until Saturday afternoon that some light wintry precipitation begins, and you can already see that battleground beginning. We've got rain in southern Kansas. We've got kind of ice in central Kansas, and then snow in northern Kansas. So we've got kind of the Oreo effect going on here, 3 different layers of precipitation. And whether you're on one of the pieces of cookie or the cream in the middle, that's going to obviously be important for your forecast. Now, I think precipitation is going to be relatively light Saturday afternoon. So if you've got any plans, you should be fine in the morning of Saturday, probably even the early afternoon. But by evening, things begin to go downhill, and you can see heavy snow beginning to develop through Nebraska, northern Kansas, an icy mess kind of in the central part of the state. And then overnight, this begins to spread in Missouri. And I'll tell you, folks, go easy on your meteorologists here in Kansas City. It is going to be a very tough forecast. You're right on the line from that sleet and freezing rain and snow. So which one it is that falls, that's going to be kind of the big question for a lot of folks. And I'll kind of show you the ensembles in a minute, and I think that'll help clear it up a little bit. But you get the idea. A full-blown winter storm beginning overnight Saturday. By the time we're waking up Sunday, heavy snow falling into central Kansas, heavy ice, whether that be sleet or freezing rain, right here just south of Kansas City on this latest model run, and getting down into central Missouri. And that's where the impacts will probably be the worst, honestly. The snow, it's going to drop big totals, more than a foot in places, but that ice also going to be a problem here into southern Kansas, southern Missouri, and into surrounding areas Sunday morning. And by Sunday afternoon, I think this is when the cold air begins to catch up a little bit, and we're going to change over from potentially ice in Kansas City back to snow by the afternoon. And again, I do think we're going to have icing issues in Kansas City. I think it'll mix in which could bring down some of those snow totals. But back here, folks, in northern Kansas and northern Missouri, big snow where it's going to be snow the entire time. We're talking half a foot to a foot plus, and the storm continues to rage on Sunday afternoon. But as it's pulling away, moving to all snow for many folks as that cold air erodes the warm nose in the mid layers that was producing the ice once, is now back to being below freezing, and we're going to get a nice coating of snow on top of any ice or if you were snow the entire time that falls. So again, that snow on the backside going to help. And even I think folks that are kind of rain the entire time, you see down here in northern Arkansas where this is basically an all rain event, here on the backside as the storm pulls away, a quick changeover to snow is possible. Probably won't accumulate too much, but could definitely be nice and festive. And that would be overnight Sunday into Monday, and then the storm is out of here. Now, let's talk about this part of the map, and we'll kind of discuss St. Louis all the way over through the Ohio Valley. All clear today, like I said. I think even Saturday, all clear. It's overnight Saturday and really the beginning of Sunday and Sunday morning that things begin to go downhill. Here's that feisty ice line. St. Louis, this is the European model. It shows snow to start off. I think that's about right. I think we'll start as snow in St. Louis. But by the time we get later on, see this icing line creeping up. And I'll show you a sounding here in a second. But what's happening is here's our low pressure system. And the low level jet is absolutely ripping here. We've got very cold air back on this side of the storm, and we've got very warm air on this side. And that's creating a pressure imbalance just above our head at about 850 millibars. And that's going to create a very strong low-level jet that's going to move warm air just above the surface up north. And that's why we're seeing ice and not all snow. And if I take a sounding in St. Louis, now this is the latest European model for Sunday afternoon, and I'll kind of walk you through the meteorology behind this a little bit. So it might be hard to see, but you see this little line right here? Let me pick a different color so you can see it even better. This kind of blue line I have drawn, this is the freezing line in the atmosphere. So at the surface, it says the temperature is 23 degrees. So you're thinking, well, there's no way it's going to be anything but snow. But you see up here, see how the temperature actually gets closer to that blue line at about 700, 800 millibars? That is the warm nose, and that's what could potentially change your beautiful snow into ice on the European model. You can see that unfolding. As we get even further ahead, it gets a little bit closer. So it's going to be close in St. Louis. I'm of the thought process ice is going to mix in. If you're lucky, though, it'll stay snow the entire time, and you could get nearly a foot of snow. That's another possibility. I'm just skeptical that it will be cool enough through all layers of the atmosphere through the entire storm's life cycle. Now, somewhere I can guarantee you it's not going to be a lot of snow. That's southern Missouri, southern Illinois, into extreme southern Indiana, and into central Kentucky, where we're going to have an all-out ice storm raging by Sunday afternoon as this continues to work eastbound. And by the evening of Sunday, you're going to see that ice continue to build up. Snow to the north here through Cincinnati, Columbus, Louisville. I think ice. I think it's going to be close, but I think it's going to be more ice than snow. And this storm continues to work east during the overnight hours of Sunday and into Monday, and you'll notice all that wintry precipitation continuing. Now, another threat that hasn't been talked a lot about, at least on my channel, I'm sure other channels who probably enjoy severe weather a little more have, but we're going to have a severe weather threat Sunday afternoon and overnight Sunday from Memphis through northern Mississippi, southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, and even portions of extreme eastern Texas. That low-level jet that I talked about that's bringing the warm air, yeah, it's going to do the same thing further south, but even likely more warm air. And that combined with just immense wind shear that we're going to be dealing with could very much lead to a couple tornadoes and strong straight line winds. Now, is this going to be a line segment of storms, or we're going to have supercells? That's still yet to be determined. And we'll know more about that probably by tonight's live stream and or tomorrow whenever we come back and look at all of this. But that will be a concern with this storm setup as well, is the severe weather. So just briefly wanted to throw that in here. Now, continuing ahead overnight Sunday into Monday, heavy snow to the north, heavy ice in the middle, and then heavy rain to the south, backside of the storm. Here's that snow like I talked about. I think even if you do have icing problems in St. Louis, you'll get a nice little inch of snow on the backside of this thing. And even that snow swinging south to areas that were iced the entire time near Cape Girardeau and into portions of Kentucky and western Tennessee, seeing some of that snow on the backside here overnight Sunday into early Monday. And by Monday afternoon, folks, still seeing some of that back end snow into Kentucky, even portions of Tennessee, maybe Nashville, who was rain the entire storm, get some snow on the backside. Same story for the Cumberland Plateau and into the mountains of North Carolina and the Virginias. But then it pulls out of this area by overnight Monday and into Tuesday. All right, what about the Mid-Atlantic? Another area that's going to see plenty of winter weather impacts out of the storm. Well, here we go. This is Sunday afternoon, and we're going to talk now about kind of Kentucky, West Virginia, over towards the Virginias and into the Delmarva and even portions of New Jersey and Philadelphia. So Sunday afternoon, really all clear, I think. Maybe starting a little bit of snow here into southwestern Virginia, the northern mountains of North Carolina, but it'll be short-lived. It'll probably dry out a little bit, and then overnight, Sunday into early Monday, that's when the real storm begins. So heavy snow breaking out here into West Virginia, into northern and central Virginia. And again, I will caution you, wherever you see this ice, go ahead and assume it's about 50 miles further north. That's kind of a safe bet to do. When you have these big low pressures, the models often underdo that rain snow line, or that ice snow line rather in this case, and it's probably going to be a little bit further north than what this model is showing. So definitely be aware of that. But either way, here we go. Overnight, further deeper in, this is about midnight Monday morning. We've got now heavy ice breaking out into southwest Virginia, some ice hanging on into the mountains of North Carolina, snow beginning to fall into DC through much of West Virginia, and just the northern half of Virginia as a whole. All rain into the Carolinas outside of the mountains. Maybe a little bit of sleet at the beginning in the triad. I don't think that'll be a big deal though. And then we'll go further ahead. This is early Monday morning. We've got heavy snow on this model into the Delmarva and just south of DC, and you're seeing not a whole lot up near Philly and New York. I will still caution you. I think this is going to be a tad bit further north. So I think the heaviest axis of snow probably going to be more in here. Right here on the model, it's down near the Tidewater. I think closer up towards DC, Philadelphia, Baltimore, maybe even more Baltimore than anything, and then into southern New Jersey and Delaware. I'm going to watch this area for higher end snowfall potential. This model, though, a little bit further south. Is that possible? It is, absolutely. We'll watch the trends. Heavy rain into upstate South Carolina, heavy rain into Charlotte, into the Piedmont of the Carolinas, and then that snow to the north, and ice hanging on into southwest Virginia. By Monday afternoon, the storm continues. Like I also mentioned earlier, precipitation not quite as abundant here compared to out west. Those upper level ingredients not quite as helpful, I think, to produce big precipitation. So we'll see how that plays out here, but you'll notice kind of this dry slot in between and just lighter precip returns compared to what we were seeing out near Missouri. And partially that's due to that upper level piece of energy kind of crunching down on the storm a little bit, and that'll kind of, I guess, empty out the precipitation somewhat. But we'll see. Again, that's just another variable in the storm for you folks in the Mid-Atlantic, and all that snow, all that rain, and all the ice continue Monday afternoon, and then beginning to clear up a little bit by the evening, leftover showers. And then this latest model actually brings a nice little burst of snow on the backside into Virginia, even producing some snow into the Raleigh area. Is that possible? It is possible. We will see. It's kind of a tough setup. This is kind of cold air chasing moisture a little bit on the backside of the storm. Doesn't normally work out. But if you can get a back little deformation band or something like that to form, this could be possible. So we'll see. It's definitely a little interesting tidbit that I'm seeing for the first time as well with you on the model. Then either way, everything clears out by Tuesday, and we'll be back to tracking the next potential snow system. All right, so let's talk about totals here, though, because this is going to be something that's interesting for sure for many of you, and kind of probably the reason you even tuned into the video in the first place. This is snowfall total from our blend of models, and there's a couple highlighted areas I want to talk about. We'll start out here, northern Kansas, northern Missouri. This is the first area I think that could see big snow. Probably many of you going to be in that 6 to 8 inch range north of Kansas City up near St. Joseph, and into northern and specifically northeastern Kansas itself. Some people here, again, I'm going to kind of draw 6 to 8 here. Some people are going to be on the plus side of that. Someone's going to get near a foot. I think it's even possible that we see reports of a foot plus, but overall, most of you are going to be in that 6 to 8 inch plus range. Now, the next big area on the map that you're seeing for snowfall potential, and by the way, let me talk about little specific areas. St. Louis, this is what I'm talking about. You're right on that line from big snow to your north near Springfield, where we could see more than a foot of snow, and to your south near Farmington, where this is going to be a big ice storm, and it's going to really just be a little bit of snow on the back end. St. Louis right in the center. If you're in the northern suburbs near Upper Alton, kind of maybe even back towards O'Fallon and areas like that, Edwardsville, Illinois here, I do think you could see higher end totals, maybe around 8 inches. If you're on the south side, though, near Waterloo, Belleville, Festus, it's going to be mainly ice. This is going to be more of a 2 to 4 inch event, with most of that coming on the front side and the back side of the system, and everything in between kind of being ice. It's going to be the same problem here into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and into much of Kentucky, where I think big snow totals from Springfield, Indianapolis, up towards Columbus, maybe even Cincinnati, where this is going to be a 6 to 12 inch plus event in these areas. And I think many folks going to get on the plus side of that. We'll see plenty of reports of 13, 14, maybe even 15 or 16 inches of snow in this area. But most people, I'll even kind of change the 6 to an 8 here, probably more about 8 to 12 inches of snow, I think is going to be a safer bet in this area. So there we go. I'll kind of redraw it, and hopefully you can see that there. These will be the biggest winners, I think, out of the storm. Right around Indianapolis, back towards Springfield, we're going to have a lot more precipitation. And if you can hold on to snow the whole time, it's going to pile up to be a really big storm. Cincinnati, you're right on the edge there. You're on the south side where ice could mix in, probably closer to we'll say 5 to 8 inches, maybe even a little less than that if the warm nose really overperforms. You get south of that even more, back down towards Louisville, you're going to run into even more problems. It's probably going to be mainly ice for you with, again, about 3 inches, 2 to 4 inches, most of that coming on the front end and the back end of the storm, with everything in between kind of being ice. Now, let's get into the mid-Atlantic. Biggest snow totals here, I do think, is going to be up into the mountains of northern West Virginia, western Maryland, southern Pennsylvania, where half a foot to a foot of snow is going to be possible. DC, the latest Euro I showed you was snow the entire time, but once again, I'll caution you, some of that ice could mix in, and if I was a forecaster in DC, I'd say about 3 to 6 inches of snow. Probably more likely on the lower side of that than the upper side of that. So take that in mind. And then you get south towards Richmond. I think mainly an ice event for you folks, 1 to 2, we'll say 1 to 3 inches of snow back out into Roanoke. Going to be mainly an ice event as well here into southwest Virginia. And then you get down towards North Carolina. I think the only chance for snow here is going to be on the back end. If enough precipitation hangs around, especially in the mountains, we'll have a higher end chance of that. Less so up here into the northern half of the state from the Triad to Raleigh. Pretty unlikely you see any snow, but we'll see what the mesoscale models with that back end piece of energy as we get a tad closer. Philadelphia, I think, again, you're lucky you're not going to have any ice, but the potential is, or the problem is, how much precip gets knocked down by that northern piece of energy, how much convergence aloft sinks the air and prevents any major accumulation will be the question here. In New York City, you're going to need the storm to trend pretty far north here, but I would say you see some snow, maybe an inch or two. Philadelphia, I'd go about 5 inches or so. We'll say 4 to 6 inches for you folks there. And then that 3 to 6 down into DC. Baltimore, kind of somewhere in between. So that's the snowfall. What about ice? Also going to be a problem here. It's early in the morning, so sorry about the stutter or whatever that was. But seeing a big ice signal here. Biggest area I think is going to be south of St. Louis. From kind of southeastern Missouri, a little north of the southern end of the state, back towards Evansville and into Lexington, Kentucky, where half an inch of ice is going to be pretty prominent in that area. Some areas a little bit more than that, some areas a little bit less than that. Big ice concern there. Lower ice totals back into Kansas. I think actually this has trended better for you folks near Salina and kind of McPherson and Emporia. We'll definitely see some ice, but I think the back end snow will kind of cover up much of the ice that's on the surface, so it'll be crunchy for sure, but trending a little bit better for you folks back into Kansas. We get further into the east, big time ice concern as well into southwest Virginia. 1/10 of an inch up to 1/4 of an inch of ice. That's enough to make travel basically impossible, and that will bring down some trees and power lines, so do expect that problem back out here. So kind of just zoom out again. That's the icing potential for this storm. All right, that's this big storm. Now, my folks in the deep south, including the Gulf Coast, what's on the way for you? Well, this is the setup, and the models really didn't change so much overnight in a good or bad way. They've kind of stayed inconsistent, but with the pieces of energy there. So the setup from the GFS, I'm going to show you the overnight GFS first. This is the 0Z, and then I'll show you this morning's run because even that has a big difference in the modeling, where overnight it was very favorable for snow, and then this morning it was less favorable, and I'll show you why. And it's not that something big has changed. There's really just one piece of energy that we're trying to figure out. All right, so here we go. This is by next Wednesday evening. This is going into the night of the 8th of January. We've got this big piece of energy over the northeast. This is our cold air. So this is going to kind of sink south, and this is going to help keep things chilly and cold for whatever potential storm comes. So that we feel good about that. All the models kind of have this. Check that off. That's not really a check mark. That's probably more of a check. So we're good there. Now, this is the question mark down here and up here. How are these two pieces of energy going to interact? What you want is this Baja energy to get kicked out to the east and then have this northern piece of energy kind of swing down and scoop it up. That's the ideal scenario for big snow in the southeast. Kind of the middle ground scenario is just a piece of this gets kicked out and picked up by our northern stream energy, and that too could produce snow. The bust scenario where nobody sees anything is this guy just hangs out down here, doesn't do anything to help us, and then this northern stream energy comes down and is just lacking support from the southern stream to produce any sort of big snow. So let's show you what did the overnight GFS model show, and it was very favorable. Look at this. See how this piece of energy down here gets caught up by our northern stream, and then they work in tandem, and all that energy gets kicked east. That would produce a pretty big winter storm across the south, and I mean the deep south. We're talking Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, all the way up through the Carolinas, maybe even as far south as a place like South Georgia or South Alabama. Now here's the morning GFS run. And watch what's different. Again, this energy we're good on. These are the two pieces we need to figure out. And we'll move it ahead. And what happens? This is what happens. Our southern piece down here, our Baja low, as we call it, just does not move. It doesn't get picked up by the northern piece. Maybe a little bit of energy does get picked up over Texas. I think we're growing confidence over that. But for folks east of there through the deep south, it just doesn't happen. The northern piece says, I'm not picking you up, go find a different date or whatever. We're not going out, and it moves east on its own. So that's a problem for southern snow lovers in a model run like that. But here's the thing, folks. We're still about a week out from this. Really basically to the day, about a week, and the models are going to fluctuate. And when you're dealing with such a tiny little difference that has big ramifications on the forecast, you cannot lose hope if you're a snow lover, or you can't celebrate yet if you're an anti-snow lover, if you just hate the snow. We're going to have a lot of time to figure this out, and here's the latest European from overnight. In fact, we might have the morning run now. Yeah, so let's see. What does the morning run show? This might not quite go far enough, but we will see. So all right, let's see. It doesn't quite go far enough, so we'll have to go back to the overnight run. But either way, you get the idea. Same thing on the European. Here's the cold energy. Here's our southern energy. Here's our northern energy. So we'll move it back to the 0Z. And then by tomorrow morning, we should be good to start using, the 18Z run, the 6Z run, and basically all the runs we get of the models should go out far enough that we can use it for the next potential system. But overnight European, here it is. Again, watch what happens. Here's the cold energy, but what's happening back here? Are these two going to link up? Is this piece going to get kicked out east enough from the northern bit to spin it further east? Is the big question. And on the overnight run, yeah, it happens. You see, it kind of gets picked up, at least most of it. Now, some of it hangs back around here, sure, but a lot of energy gets lifted up over Texas, through the southern United States, into the deep south, and that's probably enough to produce a winter storm. So let's show you the models. What does it show? This is the overnight GFS run. By next Thursday into Friday, we've got plenty of winter weather breaking out over Texas, Louisiana, as that energy gets kicked east, and we've got a major winter storm. This is overnight of the 9th into the morning of the 10th. Big winter storm from Texas through Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama by the afternoon of next Friday. Again, folks, this is only about a week away now. This is 1 p.m. Friday, January 10th. Big ice storm, big snowstorm through the deep south, and then even moves up into the Carolinas and produces all of that. Even we've got winter weather up into the mid-Atlantic on the overnight GFS run and trying to scoot through portions of the Northeast before it kicks on out of here. And we're clear again by about the 12th or so. That's the overnight run. That was the one that was favorable for snow. This morning, well, how does that look with the less favorable upper level pattern? We do get the storm over Texas, but it's less cold. It's a little bit more rainy. And then it just not much. It moves east a little bit. Some of that energy gets kicked out, and we get a little bit of maybe some snow showers in the mid-Atlantic, some snow showers through northern Alabama, Georgia, and into the Ohio Valley. But then it just misses the connection. They're not quite together, and thus you don't get anything nearly as exciting as the overnight run. The European model, here we go. Same general idea here. Starts with a big storm over Texas. Again, looks a little rainier. I'd be suspicious of that. I think this will be more snow than anything over Texas. We'll see, obviously, what happens with the model trends, but I'm suspicious of this warmer trend that it's showing here. Either way, though, picks up enough energy. We get a southern slider. We get snow to break out by the evening of the 10th over North Alabama, North Georgia, and we've got a nice moderate winter storm here over Georgia and the Carolinas by the evening of the 10th and the overnight into the 11th. And then you get a nice little northwest flow event as well, and it kicks out here. Still not a big storm, but a storm there on the European model. Now, what about the ensembles? The oh so important ensembles. Do they show the event happening? Yes and no. There is a signal. This is the GFS ensemble. You'll see all this snow getting down here into the desert southwest and then picking up over Texas. In fact, the GFS has a higher snow signal back down south of Dallas rather than over Dallas. So when I say this could be a southern winter storm, I really mean it. Even has a bit of a snow signal into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and then into South Carolina. Just not a very big signal. So what this tells me is you have some members that are hitting it big. They're bringing a good snowstorm or ice storm. Then you have other members that show basically nothing. So it's going to be a bit of a boom or bust scenario. Now, there are some lighter end, middle of the road scenarios where some of that energy gets picked up and we get a 1 to 3 inch snow event. But it's more likely that either a whole lot gets picked up or not a lot, I think. So we'll watch that. The European ensembles and its trend here bring some snow down into the desert southwest. And then you do see that signal over Texas. In fact, a pretty good signal deep south into Texas, about an inch or so on the mean here. And then that kicks into Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and up into the Carolinas by the 11th. So really the time frame here is the 9th through the 11th or so of January. Is when we're going to see the snow potential work on through. Final thing I'll show you are temperatures. This is this weekend into kind of the start of Monday here. You'll see this big warm sector. This is why Sunday we have that severe weather threat, but here comes the cold behind the storm and all the cold out ahead of it that's in place already that is going to produce some of that ice and snow potential. The storm moves through though, and it gets cold, and that sets the stage. Here's the 9th, here's the 10th, here's the 11th. Whatever forms is going to have cold air to work with if it can form into the deep south. So cold air for once, not a question. Now, how shallow is the cold air? That may be a problem. Some folks could be ice instead of snow and all that. But someone's going to get winter weather if a storm forms from Texas to the Carolinas. It's not a matter of, cold air. It's a matter of if we even have the precipitation to work with. And that cold air looks to hang on through at least the middle of the month, folks. Look at this, even reinforcing up here. This is all the way out to the 18th on the ensemble, still showing a cold pattern, which would support more rounds of potential winter weather. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you on this Friday morning. Again, come back tonight. We should be live at about 6:30. If I'm not live for whatever reason, then I'll have a video update for you. But definitely come tonight with your questions. Bring a friend or whatever you do for a live stream, I guess. And I'll see you then. Alrighty, folks, have a great one. Stay safe out there. I'll see you all tonight.